Hello and welcome to this edition of In Conversation. It's one of the great stories of a nation successfully using its resources to create a sustainable future. Dubai certainly has modeled itself as a trade hub that is now competing with some of the largest in the world. In this edition, today we host Hamad Buamim, the president of the Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to share with us the emirate strategy for business with Africa and some of the easy measures that the continent could take to make trade between the two regions easier. Your Excellency, thank you for joining us and welcome to this edition of In Conversation. I think let's begin broadly by outlining what your thinking is in increasing trade between Dubai and the African continent.
Well, first of all, hello everyone, and thanks for hosting me. Talking about Africa for more than 10 years, actually, Dubai Chamber set strategy for supporting African companies that looking to expand globally and to try to convince them to do it through Dubai, all while promising opportunities for our Dubai-based businesses and investors to capitalize on Africa. We aim to establish constructive communication and partnership between stakeholders and decision makers on both sides to facilitate exchange of insights and opportunities. And of course, trade play a big part of this, but we look beyond trade, we look at investments, we look at building relationships. And this is where our strategy at the Chamber and in Dubai has 4 pillars. It starts with market intelligence. It's important for us for people from both sides to know more, to be able to make decisions. Trade missions, where we send a lot of people to Africa, and also we receive a lot of businesses and Africans into Dubai. And then this area of establishing our own network within Africa. And Dubai so far, or Dubai Chamber so far, has 4 offices in the African continent. And of course, the Global Business Forum, that for us is a big part of this strategy. And I can maybe talk more about that, about this forum as we speak with you.
Absolutely. I want to talk first about the partnerships that you are establishing. I want to know the structures that you have in terms of those partnerships, where they are located, who you are working with.
Well, I'll tell you, when we start looking at Africa, our focus was Sub-Saharan Africa, because we realized that historically we've been having quite strong relationship with the northern part of Africa, but not the Sub-Saharan. And this is where we start almost 8 years ago establishing our own networks. And we started with Ethiopia. Then we had another one in Ghana, and we have in Mozambique and Kenya. But we continue, of course, working with the partners throughout, whether in South Africa or Kenya or other places in Africa. And by conducting number of missions and visits and events, this is how we continue growing these relationships, where we start focusing mainly in the trade part. However, we continue expanding, educating more of our business community and investors and help them to invest in Africa.
Yeah. You referred to the need for market intelligence, crucial, of course, in established business relationships. You have to understand the person that you're talking to, the environment that they operate in. I want to understand what you've found so far in terms of the environment that your companies are finding on the continent, and then perhaps we can talk about areas where you think there would be easy wins for African governments to work on to enable faster development of trade and investment ties.
Well, I believe Africa, like any developing continent or markets, has its own opportunities and it has its own challenges. We realize that intelligence is one of the weaknesses, and it's in the same time opportunity. Its weakness, not a lot of people know enough about Africa, and they believe that African countries, they are not doing enough. And this is where we try to fill some of these gaps for at least our own business community and the ones that's coming from our sides by working with a number of credible sources. Our partners is the economist intelligence units, where we not only conducting our own studies in general, but trying to be more specifics. And here, when I say specifics, we look at areas where we believe businesses from Dubai have certain competitive advantages in certain markets, and where this competitive advantage can be useful for certain African markets. And it's been quite a good journey. We've seen very strong growth of trade during the past number of years. We've started seeing also very good investments that start going to Africa beyond just about the historical, I would say, sectors, which used to be more in real estates. We start to mobilize investments into other areas, whether it's supply chain and logistics, and infrastructure, manufacturing, even in financial services.
Yeah, I want to come back and talk about those specific sectors, perhaps where there's the greater interest. But before we do that, I wanted to make the comment that, of course, Africa is a huge region. I mean, we're talking 54, 55 territories, and you said your focus is sub-Saharan Africa. Let's break it down. Where are you seeing the greatest potential for increasing trade ties between Dubai and the continent in terms of regions and also in terms of countries?
I would say Eastern Africa being, because of the proximity, it's the easiest part for Africa, for us from our own perspectives. Again, proximity, history, these were kind of contributing factors to support the relationship. The other part, of course, also the western sides of Africa, we see bigger potentials for growth. We still think that there are more challenges, and part of this challenge really understanding what to do. And this is where I think through our presence in Ghana, we're trying to understand the market more. Of course, the language also is more challenging in the West comparing to the East. But overall, we believe that more things can be done in a number of countries. And this is something that's keep moving. So we don't want to frame ourselves only to work with part of Africa. Yeah. Our intention is really to work with the whole of Africa. And we are very actually encouraged by the recent free trade agreements that will allow us to do that.
Yeah, that conversation is going to evolve as well. What about the southern part of the continent where I am speaking to you from, where we, of course, have one of the more developed economies here in South Africa? Is there potential to increase trade ties? We know that Emirates flies here quite frequently. We also know that there are some companies from your region that are beginning to look at this side. For instance, we had that offer for Imperial Logistics from Dubai World. What are your thoughts around what Southern Africa represents in terms of an investment opportunity?
Well, we believe that Southern Africa is more developed than other parts of Africa. And when I discussed the areas of growth, we were more emphasizing in the ones that developed less than South Africa. I believe the relationship between Dubai and South Africa is quite strong. And as you correctly indicated, it's quite developed, this infrastructure. We looked, of course, at one point of time of how Dubai, South Africa can collaborate together into easing attraction of investments in the rest of Africa, and how can Dubai and Johannesburg or other parts of South Africa can work together to go into other markets. But as I said, we looked more at the growth potentials. Yeah. We think that South Africa is quite developed, and we have very strong relationship, both from investments, tourism, and the trade sides.
Yeah, yeah. When you look at our region, So we've spoken about the broad regions, right? East, west, south, central. We've left it a little bit. We know it's got its challenges as well. I wanted to talk broadly about what you have found. Are you finding it easy to get companies to establish businesses, to grow their operations, and to get more and more trade between the two regions?
We've been growing quite well historically. One model of growth that we are really aiming on is how can we partner with certain countries to position Dubai as a gateway for them beyond just to export to Dubai markets or to the GCC markets. How can we work together to take certain African products to the rest of the world?
Yeah.
And I just want to give example, for example, Kenya and the collaboration in the tea products, where the Kenyan tea is exported from Dubai to the rest of the world, making Dubai one of the largest exporters of tea in the world. These are type of examples that we're trying to work with and expand further. We're trying to bring value to the, I would say, business people in Africa, and to try to position Dubai with the infrastructure that we have with the rest of the world.
Yeah, so your model is both regional as well as national, which brings me to the question of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and what sort of opportunities you see that creating. Because one of the challenges that we have when you speak to investors is that they tell you that there isn't a clear harmonization of trade rules, for instance, between African countries. And so it becomes difficult for you to, for instance, go to Ethiopia and then you want to go to Kenya and then you find the rules are different. I want your experiences and I want your thoughts perhaps to governments that would make it easier for you to do business with them while at the same time expanding the ties that are being created by the Africa Continental Free Trade Area.
Well, one of the biggest challenges in Africa is exactly what you described. If you limit yourself to one country, maybe you can maneuver. However, you have many limitations if you want to work with a number of countries because of the challenges and changes of systems. And we hope through, of course, the African Continent Free Trade Agreements that it can solve a lot of these challenges and transform the continent and connect all these 55 countries. We see that the agreement and such agreement will definitely create great economic and investments opportunity once, of course, implemented. Not only it will reduce the tariffs, but it will boost the inter-African trade, which is important. If today I manufacture somewhere in Africa, I'm looking also at the rest of Africa as markets. And it will be very important to me as investors to have this in place.
Yeah. Do you know if there are any companies that are based in Dubai that have started trading under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area? It's early days, of course. It was launched in January amidst much fanfare. But each time I ask this question, I'm told, Godfrey, you need to be patient. These things take time.
I would tell you, this is actually one thing we're trying to promote it through the Global Business Forum in Dubai is about this agreement. Because as you correctly said, we don't think that it's matured yet. The implementation is still is slow, but this is normal, knowing the complexity also of this agreement. However, just to answer your question, no, I'm not aware of any.
Yeah, we need to get those numbers up. We need to get many more companies becoming aware of it. And I imagine one way of doing that is what you spoke about earlier. We're going back to your strategy, by the way, where you spoke about trade missions that you're conducting to the continent. So I want to know which ones are coming, what focuses they are on, and when they are coming.
Well, we are starting a Dubai Expo, and we are at a stage where we want people to come to Dubai during this period. We all know that the whole world went through a very challenging time during the past 18 months. And we hope that through Dubai Expo, we'll be able to attract many of the businesses and visitors to take advantage of Expo not only to meet other businesses, but also to connect with the rest of the world, as we have more than 192 countries are presenting over here, and quite good number of them will be in Expo.
Let's talk a little bit about the sectors on the African continent. Traditionally, foreign investors have come into the continent because they're interested in our mines. They're interested, of course, in also our consumer side lately because we've got the world's youngest population, and also we're beginning to see greater urbanization. From a Dubai perspective, when you look at the companies that are turning their attention onto our region, which sectors are they interested in? And which sectors as well, I want to know, are they not interested in?
Okay, this is very important question, and I will tell you, it keeps evolving over time. We strongly believe that Africa offers huge opportunities for collaborations and partnership across various sectors. We identify actually several sectors for growth as part of a big research we conducted along with the Economist Intelligence Units. And when we did this, we looked, as I said earlier, how can Dubai help and add value? So the sectors we identify was tourism, supply chain and logistics, financial services, along with the fintech, healthcare, retail, and e-commerce. But I want to also add a couple of important maybe sectors or areas of interest for us that we see that African continents can provide, which is food and beverages as one of them. Of course, part of that is agriculture. And here I want to highlight that only last year, Dubai traded with the continent 2.4 billion US dollars just in the food. And that was a growth of 18%, noting that the food beverage products account for 13% of the total trade of Dubai with Africa. So we believe that this food is very important sectors. You need also, the audience need to understand that this is also great importance for UAE and the Gulf region because of the food security point of view.
Sure.
The next issue is really the fact that Africa has proven to be fertile grounds for innovations as African countries move to diversify away their economies into investments on innovation-focused sectors and startups that are really driving the continent digital shift. So we want to focus also on this area and to discuss it further because we believe that there are a lot of potentials of from one side, attracting investments to Africa, and from the other side, also benefiting from what's happening in this important area.
Absolutely. I find it interesting that you haven't mentioned minerals once. Is that deliberate, or are they? Is this something that perhaps you haven't just not talked about?
No, minerals is not one of the sectors that in our work we focus on. Keep the fact that we believe that Dubai and Africa has a strong relationship in diamonds, in gold, but we focus in sectors that we believe that we can develop further and we can benefit, especially our business community in partnership with the African business community. We are talking beyond just governments or big players. We are talking more, the majorities.
Yeah, which is absolutely positive because these are areas that obviously have not been fully developed and certainly do require investment. I want to talk a little more about the challenges of investing on the African continent. Believe me, I want to believe that it's easy to invest on the African continent. But I also know from traveling in my motherland that it is tough to invest in some places. Let's talk about some of those challenges and perhaps your advice to those governments where you feel you are welcome, but there are impediments to investments. What could they do to make it easier for companies in your region to look this side?
I would labeled regulations and bureaucracy as in the top of this list. We believe that it hinders the growth. Of course, this is the case for emerging economies, including the African continent. There is no doubt that removing and streamlining unnecessary bureaucratic barriers will help trade flows and investments. I recall a paper by OECD talking about removing these barriers, or especially the non-tariff, will help increase the welfare by more than 5 times. So there is no doubt that, again, not only in Africa, but in a number of parts of the world, streamlining regulations helps strengthening public governance and fostering trust and transparency. And this will elevate investments and financing into Africa. Another point also, other than regulations, is the digital connectivity. The fact that it requires also modernize regulations, especially these are fast changing technology and innovations. Usually the regulations are lacking, and again, it hinders the future growth. So we believe that developing more transparent and collaborative and forward-looking regulations across different jurisdictions will definitely help long way attracting further investments into Africa.
Recently here in South Africa, we had a case of an American private equity company that was looking at one of our listed companies' units, and they came up against a government regulation requiring foreign investors to include black investors in any purchase that they do. I want your thoughts on that. How do you view the need for empowerment or the need for local partners in investments that are being driven from your side?
Okay, these are interesting questions, and I'll try to be here as transparent as I can. We believe that reducing requirements is better. Putting certain local requirements in investors always make investors consider alternatives, and usually alternatives are countries and regions of less requirements. But we need, of course, to allow the local communities always to benefit from anything that's coming to the country. So the benefit shouldn't be limited only to the foreign investors, but the local ones. But we've seen, again, not only in South Africa, but in a few other places, that such measures can make the country less attractive.
How do you balance that, though?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I'm asking how perhaps that could be better handled so that, as you say, you're able to benefit the locals while at the same time, of course, enabling foreign investors who are bringing in their capital to be able to reap the benefits of investing their capital.
Well, usually the taxation system can always be rooted toward developing with our local talents or supporting local communities. I'd rather that the investors see the value of attracting or using some of the local, I would say, workforce or talents, not because of regulations and requirements, but seeing it more as value addition for their own investments. Finding somehow, some way, this will allow a better formula. I cannot really answer you right away, but I'm aware of similar measures in a number of countries. And this is also including our case in the Gulf region, where we understand also from foreign investors, sometimes certain countries we have here in our region require their locals to be majority of the workforce, which really can be limited to foreign investments.
Absolutely. Your Excellency, I appreciate your frankness because it's important, I think, that we speak freely and frankly so that we understand the requirements from the other side and then we try and find solutions to those challenges. I'm going to ask for your final thoughts in respect of the Dubai-Africa business relationship and perhaps little easy wins that we can do to ensure that as we go to Dubai 2020, we can increase that trade flow between the two regions?
Well, also I appreciate your questions. I just want to say that, this is really a fact for us here in Dubai, Africa is already popular destination for Dubai-based investors and business people, giving the great opportunities that emerging in these promising markets. But there is still a lot of untapped potentials. We're still very interested to do more. And African countries must take the first steps toward driving growth in a number of key sectors. And this is what we want to provide as opportunity here in Dubai as your partners. And this, of course, brings the issues of streamlining regulations that we talked about, and of course, setting up also the infrastructure. When we talk about infrastructure, we believe that Dubai has a lot of expertise and know-how, and our business communities and investors can get involved in such infrastructure projects across the continent. Another important area also to focus on is this digital economy. And we believe there is a huge opportunity for Africa for it. Again, Dubai can be a good partners to work win-win situations to attract more investments and provide more solutions in this area. Last point that I just want to highlight, Dubai has set a goal to increase our trade to 2 trillion dirhams. This is more than 500 billion US dollars over the next 5 years. And since Africa is already one of our largest trading partners, we believe that if we can help more investors capitalize on its huge untapped potentials, Africa can be the most influential factor in ramping up Dubai, a global trade. And this Global Business Forum is an important component in this journey. And the forum can play a tremendous role in steering foreign investments from Dubai, UAE, and the GCC into Africa. We believe also the current timing is ideal for UAE and Africa companies to leverage both the Global Business Forum and Expo Dubai platforms to capitalize on the bilateral business opportunities and forge partnerships to drive sustainable economic growth.
We appreciate your time, Said. That's Hamad Buamim, President and CEO of the Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.
I don't think